Here is a quiet corner of the universe, where light
The
moves
cellular
slowly,
regeneration
as if
seems
it
to
is
be
drifting
accelerating
through a
beyond our
dream.
projections.
And in that soft expanse, far beyond the reach of planets and human noise, something once shimmered at the edge of the James Webb Telescope's vision. A faint, gentle glow, almost like the flicker of a lantern deep inside an ocean. Astronomers didn't know what it was. It didn't rush. It didn't flash for attention. It simply pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm, one quiet beat every 33 seconds, a breath in the dark. They named it 3I, Atlas, but even that name felt too heavy for something so calm. It floated between the stars the way a feather drifts across a still room, with no urgency and no intention to disturb. When Webb turned its warm sensors toward it, the telescope found a small glow of heat coming from within the object. It's not strong, not alarming, just a soft warmth in the cold, like a tiny ember inside an old piece of coal. The light it released wasn't chaotic. Thin bands of emission flowed from it with the same softness as distant whale songs beneath the surface of a moonlit sea. Patterns emerged, not harsh or deliberate, but gentle, like echoes of memories. The object carried with it across the stars.
Jupiter arrival.
Scientists watched quietly. Even they felt the need to lower their voices in the presence of such a peaceful traveler. Then, over many slow days, the brightness of the object rose a little. Not like a flare, more like someone slowly opening their eyes after resting for a long time. Its path shifted as well, not sharply, not in a way that cut through the fabric of space, just a slight turn, like choosing a calmer stream in a cosmic river, drifting, drifting, always drifting. And from its trailing side, a small piece separated, a dark, geometric shard. It didn't tumble or spark. It simply floated behind the main body, matching its calm descent like a companion who had always been there. The shard was smooth, almost too smooth. It didn't shine. It didn't reflect. It absorbed the light around it, the way deep sleep absorbs the last echoes of a long day. Across Earth, telescopes turned their quiet gaze outward. There was no panic, only wonder, a kind of gentle curiosity that made even scientists breathe more slowly, as if the object's calmness had reached all the way across the void. Its rotation followed ancient mathematical rhythms, pi, prime numbers, golden spiral, patterns
The
that
error
felt
came
less
from the
like
AIS.
communication
The
and
coordinates
more
were
like
mixed
cosmic
up.
breathing exercises, repeated for millennia. When the Deep Space Network sent a soft greeting toward it, the object didn't answer with sound or light. It only changed its rotation by a tiny amount, a small nod across an ocean of stars, a whisper of acknowledgement. Old sky surveys revealed that it had passed this way before. Once in the late 80s, once near the turn of the century, once just a decade ago. Always quiet, always drifting, never stopping long enough for anyone to notice. Its path now curved gently toward Europa, a moon wrapped in ice, holding a dark ocean that has slept for longer than human history. Europa is a world that understands stillness. A world where nothing breaks the silence except the slow shifting of frozen crust and the distant rhythm of tides beneath layers of ice. Perhaps that silence is what called to the traveler. As 3I, Atlas, neared the moon, its emissions grew smoother and smoother until the light it gave off felt like the final notes of a lullaby fading into the quiet. Europa seemed to stir in response, not loudly, but in tiny shifts in pressure, the smallest widening of an icy crack, the softest change in the reflection of its frozen plains, like a sleeper rolling from one dream into another. The traveler slowed its drift, not in fear, but in reverence, as though approaching a place it remembered, or a place that remembered it. Soft harmonies rippled across
What
space.
is that? What am I
Triplet
seeing?
pulses flowed gently between the object and Europa, like two distant beams humming in unison. And the shard, that small, silent companion, moved closer to the moon, following a path as smooth as falling snow. Nothing hurried, nothing forced. Just two ancient travelers meeting again after a very long journey through a very quiet universe. The approach toward Europa continued with the same quiet patience that had guided the traveler across so many distances. Even as it drifted closer, 3i Atlas did not illuminate the sky with any burst of power. Instead, it softened its glow, like someone dimming a lamp before entering a room where another sleeps. Everything about its movement felt careful, measured not by urgency but by respect. Scientists watched through telescopes as the object's emissions flattened into a calm, nearly featureless line. It wasn't silent, not entirely, but the vibrations seemed to blend into the cosmic background, as though the traveler were trying to move unnoticed through the fabric of space. The shard behind it floated with the same serene control, adjusting its position by the gentlest increments. Space around the object shifted in delicate ways. Stars behind it appeared slightly bent, not sharply, but as though the traveler were gliding through subtle folds in space-time. These distortions did not feel threatening. Instead, they resembled ripples around a slow-moving oar cutting across still water. Each ripple passed gently into the darkness and faded. When sensitive instruments detected resonance patterns being drawn inward toward the object, the discovery brought no rush of alarm. The patterns were soft, like distant whispers drifting from a place beyond sight. The idea that something was communicating with 3i Atlas, or perhaps guided, felt strangely natural. Maybe this was how wanderers of deep space checked on each other, like old travelers exchanging quiet greetings. Earth's observatories registered faint electromagnetic murmurs flowing between the object and Europa, low-frequency waves, barely distinguishable from the hum of cosmic noise. Yet when scientists slowed the waves, smoothed them, and placed them side by side, they found that Europa's ice responded with gentle echoes, not in words, not in messages, but in patterns that moved with the patience of tides beneath a frozen sea, as though Europa were humming back. Beneath the moon's hard crust lies a world of water that has been sleeping for longer than humanity can measure, a world with no storms, no wind, no sound, except the slow shifting currents in a darkness deeper than any cave on Earth. That ocean, untouched and unbothered, now resonated in soothing tones, as if acknowledging the approach of something familiar. The shard's descent began without fanfare. At first, it merely drifted a little faster, as though drawn forward by an invisible current. Then, it aligned with Europa's surface, choosing a course with unhurried precision. It neither tumbled nor rotated. It simply followed a smooth path downward, like a grain of sand settling slowly through water. 3i Atlas did not accelerate to follow. It maintained its place, hovering above the moon with the stillness of a quiet guardian. From Earth, the pair looked almost like lanterns placed at different heights, one dimmer and darker than the other, but both sharing the same silent intention. Europa's ice glimmered faintly. The shard glided closer, its dark geometry absorbing the last traces of reflected sunlight. Scientists expected some trace of heat, some shift in radiation, some sign of interaction. Instead, the shard approached the ice as softly as dusk falling on a sleeping valley. Below, something stirred. Not movement in the traditional sense, nothing sudden, but a subtle change in the distribution of warmth beneath the ice. A ripple of temperature nudged outward, followed by another. These patterns resembled the way a deep ocean animal might release a slow pulse of energy after drifting for centuries in darkness. The shard touched Europa's surface without a sound. There was no crack, no plume, no disruption. It simply disappeared into one of the moon's many fissures, as if sinking into a pool of ink. A moment later, the faintest resonance spread beneath the ice. A low wave traveled outward like a whisper. For a while, nothing else happened. A long pause. A breath held across the stars. Then a reply came not from the object above,
Báo động khẩn
but
cấp,
from
năng
beneath
lượng suy giảm.
Europa's frozen shell.
Tôi đang
A
cố gắng
quiet
ổn định lò
pulse of
phản ứng.
energy rose from the depths of the sleeping ocean. It flowed gently through the crust, emerging into space as a soft echo. Its rhythm matched the original heartbeat of 3i Atlas, the slow 33-second cycle that had first captured human curiosity. A call, and an answer, both too quiet to be anything but intimate, like two distant memories finally recognizing one another. In the control rooms on Earth, the recorded waveforms drifted across screens with unassuming grace. They carried none of the drama people often associated with space discoveries. Instead, they felt like lullabies carried through the void. Scientists, usually quick to theorize, spoke less during these moments. Some simply watched the oscillating lines and listened to the faint hum underlying them, as if they were eavesdropping on something not meant to be interrupted. Its glow dimmed further, settling into a soft twilight hue. Its movement slowed almost imperceptibly, and then it tilted, like someone turning their head before taking a final look at a familiar landscape. It did not retrieve the shard. It did not descend further. It only lingered there, suspended in stillness, as Europa continued to resonate quietly beneath it. And then, as gently as it had arrived, 3i Atlas began to move away, not sharply, not with any visible force. It simply drifted backward, letting gravity and the quiet mechanics of space guide its departure. Its path arced slowly, rising above Europa's horizon. The object moved with the grace of a boat, sliding across a calm tide. Observers watching from Earth felt an odd sense of nostalgia, even though the encounter was still unfolding. Something about the traveler's departure carried the familiarity of a story that has no clear beginning and no clear ending. As if it were part of a cycle older than all human memory, a cycle that had played out many times and would play out many more. The faint light from the object shimmered one last time, offering 3 small flickers soft enough to be missed if someone blinked. These flickers felt almost like a goodbye, though that word might be too heavy for such a gentle gesture. It could have been nothing more than the natural fading of a distant glow. Or it could have been the traveler acknowledging the quiet world it was leaving behind. The shard remained deep beneath Europa's ice. The resonance between the moon and the traveler faded gradually, like ripples settling after a pebble falls into a still pond. The ocean beneath the crust resumed its ancient calm, though now something within it glowed faintly, a soft, patient light, like a memory waiting to grow. 3i Atlas drifted farther into the dark, shrinking slowly against the canvas of stars. It did not accelerate. It did not change course abruptly. Its departure felt as patient as its arrival, as though it were simply following a long and familiar path across the cosmic sea. Soon, it slipped beyond the range of Webb's most sensitive instruments. Telemetry signals faded into a soft haze. The last visual frame captured a small silhouette, dissolving gently into the distance. Surrounded by the quiet, endless dark, on Earth, the world continued, unaware for the most part that a quiet traveler had passed through their neighborhood again. But those who watched felt that they had witnessed something rare, not an intrusion, not a warning, but a soft reminder of how the universe breathes. They understood that space is not silent out of emptiness. It is silent out of patience. And in that patience, ancient things drift, never in haste, never in violence, but in long, slow cycles that unfold like dreams. Europa would keep sleeping, the shard would rest beneath its ice, and somewhere far away, 3i Atlas continued its journey, humming in a rhythm older than any human story. As it left the solar system again, its gentle presence lingered in the minds of those who had watched it. A presence that felt neither alien nor familiar, but something in between. A quiet traveler moving along an ancient route, touching worlds the way a breeze touches tall grass, leaving barely a trace except for the sense that something peaceful had passed by. And out in the deep, where stars glow faintly like embers floating in endless dark, the traveler drifted onward, slow, unhurried.
The cellular regeneration seems to be accelerating beyond our projections.
Surrounds all things. The days that followed were quiet ones, both on Earth and across the vastness of space where 3i Atlas continued its drifting departure from Europa. It moved the way a slow thought moves through the mind just before sleep, soft and unhurried. The glow that had once pulsed gently from within its core now dimmed into a steady, muted warmth. Not gone, just resting. Far below, beneath Europa's pale ice, the faint echo that had risen from the deep ocean slowly faded back into silence. Yet something subtle remained, an almost imperceptible vibration within the frozen crust. The kind that lingers long after a bell has been softly struck. It was not a signal, not a message. It was more like a memory settling into place. The shard that had entered the moon remained, buried out of view, wrapped in layers of cold, ancient water. No camera or instrument could see it, yet its presence felt gentle, like a pebble resting at the bottom of a still pond. Even the thermal readings around the fissure where it had descended steadied into a calm plateau, as if Europa itself had accepted the newcomer into its quiet depths.
Launch.
As 3I
Mid-course correction.
Atlas drifted farther
Jupiter
away,
arrival.
instruments on Earth captured the last traces of the soft resonance that had passed between the traveler and the moon. The waveforms became thinner, slower, until they resembled the long, peaceful breaths of someone slipping back into a deep sleep. Scientists observed the trailing patterns without speaking. Something about the fading cycles encouraged silence, as if any attempt to analyze or dissect them too quickly would break the delicate stillness they carried. Many of them stayed in their dimmed workrooms long after their shifts ended, watching the data roll in like whispers across a calm sea. Meanwhile, in the vacuum where planets looked like lanterns floating in the dark, 3I Atlas continued to rise away from Europa's horizon. Its rotation slowed slightly, drifting into an almost meditative state. The distortions of light around it smoothed into gentle curves, soft ripples that moved outward and dissolved without urgency. At certain angles, the traveler almost looked like a small island drifting across a starlit ocean, marking no path and leaving no wake. Somewhere behind it, Jupiter loomed quietly, its storms swirling with ancient patience. The great planet's presence added a faint glow to the scene, illuminating the traveler's silhouette as it slipped along its outbound arc. The giant bands of the gas world pulsed
The error
softly
came from the
in infrared,
AIS. The
like
coordinates
the
were
slow
mixed
turning
up.
of an enormous dreamer lying beneath layers of cloud. Earth did not receive any new pulses, or any signs of change. But that, too, felt appropriate. 3I Atlas had never been loud, never abrupt, never insistent. It seemed content simply to exist as part of the universe's drifting rhythm. Whatever had happened with Europa was not meant to be a spectacle. It was more like the meeting of two echoing tides, or the quiet reunion of old currents beneath a calm surface. Weeks passed. The object's faint glow grew dimmer, not as a sign of departure, but as if merging with the infinite calm of interstellar space. Its warmth receded into a steady equilibrium, blending into the background temperature like someone easing into a comfortable bed. Occasionally, the object emitted small fluctuations, barely detectable shimmers that flickered and faded like distant embers. These were not signals. They had no structure, no meaning. They felt more like involuntary gestures, the cosmic equivalent of turning over in one's sleep. The deep space telescopes continued tracking 3I Atlas as long as they could, but each passing day made the drift harder to follow. The universe is vast, and even something that glows with its own warmth eventually blends into the darkness, the way a paper lantern floats higher and higher until it becomes indistinguishable from the stars. Back on Europa, studies of the ice revealed slight but persistent vibrations. They were not disruptive, not even measurable without extreme
What is that?
instrumentation.
What am I seeing?
But they existed. Gentle shifts beneath the surface, as though the ocean below had begun to dream a little louder than before. In some models, the movements resembled the early stages of convection, like warm currents beginning to stir in deep water. In others, they looked like resonance waves reflecting from unknown structures far beneath the ice. Nothing conclusive, nothing dramatic, just possibilities that drifted across scientific discussions like soft fog. There were theories, of course, theories about what the shard might be doing now that it rested beneath the frozen shell. Theories about what the gentle resonance between object and moon might have meant. theories about whether the shard would remain dormant forever or slowly become part of Europa's endless, sleeping ocean. But these were only theories. And theories, in moments like these, felt too heavy. Most scientists found that they preferred simply to watch, to observe, without forcing conclusions. They felt the same calm curiosity that had settled over them the day the object first shimmered in the telescope's deep field. A sense of witnessing something older than human history, something that moved according to its own quiet wisdom. The days blended into one another, each one passing softly as 3I, Atlas, drifted farther from Jupiter's domain. It no longer appeared on wide-field images. Its signature on deep sensors thinned into a faint, irregular line. And then, eventually, even that line slipped into the background, swallowed gently by cosmic noise, not lost, just farther away. Somewhere beyond the icy moons, the object continued, its long journey, slow, dreamlike, gentle. Perhaps toward another quiet world. Perhaps toward another ocean hidden beneath a sleeping crust. Perhaps toward nothing in particular, simply wandering through the universe the way a quiet traveler walks beneath a night sky with no need for destination. The memory of its passing remained with those who had seen it, not as fear or awe, but as a kind of comfort, a reminder that the universe, in all its vastness, is not always violent or loud. Sometimes it moves softly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sends travelers through the darkness who carry no threat, only presence. And in the hush that follows such moments, it becomes possible to believe that there are places out there where even the stars rest easy, where time drifts like mist, and where ancient visitors glide through the cosmic sea with the quiet grace of something that has always known the value of stillness. The shard beneath Europa's ice remained where it was, wrapped in silence, surrounded by a dreaming ocean that understood patience. No countdown, no activation, just rest, and in the deep spaces beyond sight, 3I, Atlas, continued drifting, the way everything eventually drifts, into the long, gentle dark. Long after 3I, Atlas, had faded from the range of Earth's instruments, the memory of its passing lingered quietly in the minds of those who had watched. It wasn't the kind of event that left behind warnings or breakthroughs or loud revelations. Instead, it left a soft impression, like waking from a dream that doesn't vanish right away, but stays with you in gentle waves. Some nights, astronomers would return to their observatories after their shifts had ended. They would sit in the dim glow of monitors, letting old data play across the screens without searching for answers. They watched the slow decline of the object's signal, the final images of its silhouette dissolving into deep space, and the subtle harmonic patterns traced from Europa's ice. None of it felt like something demanding resolution. It felt like something that had always existed, something they were fortunate enough to glimpse for a short while. In those quiet hours, they found comfort in the idea that some mysteries were meant to be experienced rather than solved. 3I, Atlas, had drifted through the solar system not as a messenger or a warning, but as a reminder that the universe has its own pace, its own long and gentle cycles that unfold beyond the urgency of human time. Europa, too, returned to its steady rhythm. The moon's ice settled back into stillness, though the slightest warmth deep beneath the surface continued to rise and fall in soft pulses. Instruments captured these fluctuations with the same tenderness as someone listening through a wall for the breathing of a sleeping loved one. There were no patterns clear enough to decipher, no disruptions strong enough to provoke concern.
Tôi đang cố gắng
Some
ổn định lò
models
phản
showed
ứng.
the possibility of new currents forming in the subsurface ocean, slow, patient movements of water carrying traces of heat. These currents were not fast or powerful. They resembled the gentle motion of deep-sea tides on Earth, the kind that stir sediments without disturbing the silence of the ocean floor. Whether these currents were caused by the shard, by the resonance, or by some natural cycle was impossible to tell. But the calmness of the patterns reassured everyone who studied them. The shard remained unmoving, or perhaps it moved so slowly that no instrument could measure its progress. Its silent geometry rested in the dark water, its surface absorbing what little light reached it. There was a sense that it belonged there now, that it had found a place where time itself seemed to slow. Meanwhile, far beyond the orbit of Jupiter, 3I, Atlas, continued its quiet journey. It drifted through regions of space where stars are thin and faint, where cosmic dust floats like the softest mist. Sometimes, a faint pulse of warmth would appear on distant sensors, nothing strong, nothing suggestive of purpose, just a small signature rising and falling like the calm breath of a sleeper. These pulses grew rarer as the object moved far from the Sunday. Perhaps its warmth was fading naturally, perhaps it had entered a deeper kind of rest, or perhaps it was simply blending into the vastness, becoming part of the steady hum of the cosmos. On Earth, life carried on. People went about their routines, unaware that something ancient and quiet had passed close by. The few who had watched from observatories or research labs found themselves speaking less about what 3I Atlas was, and more about how it made them feel. It was rare for a scientific event to evoke emotion, yet this one did, soft, introspective emotions that echoed long after the data had faded. Some described feeling as though they had witnessed a visiting bird settle briefly on a branch before flying into a distant forest. Others compared the experience to watching bioluminescent plankton drift beneath a boat on a silent night, glowing faintly before the water swallowed the light again. None of these metaphors were perfect, but each held something true. One researcher described the moment most accurately. She said, "It felt like the universe breathed near us, just once, and then drifted away before we could ask its name." As weeks turned into months, the story of 3I Atlas gradually took on the quality of a shared dream. It was spoken of less in urgent scientific terms and more in the hushed tone reserved for things that feel sacred but fragile. Students heard it from professors who turned their eyes upward when they spoke. Families in remote towns heard it from amateur astronomers who took their telescopes out at night, not to find the object, but to feel close to the sky it had passed through. Europa's ocean remained undisturbed on the surface, but deep within, the quiet motions persisted. Thermal maps revealed soft swirls of warmth moving through the dark sea like drifting clouds. Instruments detected slight modulations in the moon's electromagnetic field, passing through at regular intervals. Not strong, not insistent, just there. Some wondered whether the shard had released something into the water, perhaps not material, but a frequency, a memory, or a spark meant to lie dormant until conditions were right. Others believed it had come to rest in Europa simply because the moon offered the kind of silence and calm the traveler had been moving toward for ages. By the time Earth's telescopes fully lost track of 3I Atlas, most researchers agreed on one thing. The object had not come seeking contact. It had come seeking rest. The solar system, with its sleeping oceans and cold distances, had simply been a quiet harbor along a much longer voyage. No one knew where it was going next. Perhaps toward another icy moon, orbiting a distant star. Perhaps toward a dark nebula where dust clouds whisper ancient songs. Perhaps nowhere at all, simply drifting through eternity, the way a leaf drifts on a still river. But even as its faint glow vanished into the endless dark, the calm it brought remained. It had shown, in its unhurried pace, that the universe contains not only chaos and collision, but also gentle wanderers that move through the void with an understanding of silence deeper than any human meditation. Europa slept again. Earth listened for a while longer, and somewhere in the dark between stars,
the cellular
a traveler
regeneration
followed an
seems to be
ancient
accelerating
path,
beyond our
quiet as a
projections.
sigh, steady as a long-forgotten lullaby.